Good evening, Browns fans, and welcome to OBR Weekly. It's Wednesday, 7 o'clock. That means Fred and I are here, ready to talk Browns football. How you doing, Fred?
I'm doing good, a little tired. Just got home out on the 100-degree football field. They make you stand on the cement, and boy, that gets pounding on you. But takes it out of you. But I'm here.
But don't worry, Fred. Soon enough, it'll be minus 20 degrees out there, and you'll have that balance that you're looking for, temperature wise.
Okay.
Okay. As you know, if you watch this program presented by CoreHomeFitness.com, we are powered by your comments and questions, and tonight that is especially true, because today my pre-show preparation is especially ragged because today was just crazy for me with all the news and all the stuff going on. But please feel free to hit us up in the chat room with your comments and questions, and we will highlight them throughout the show today, and we will go straight into those because they're far more interesting than anything I have to say. Sancho Bermuda says, I had moved on from my anxiety. Now I am excited for week 1. Fred, you will find it unsurprising that I have not moved on from my anxiety. I'm still very anxious about this team. And, even a little bit more so, given the roster and the cut downs and all the talent that we had to let go. Look at this 53 man roster. Is there any position that gives you anxiety other than maybe quarterback? Because I think quarterback gives us all a little bit of anxiety. But is there any position that really worries you after the cut down to 53?
Barry, I do not get anxiety over the Browns. I don't get anxious about anything that I have no control over.
Well,
And
that's good.
I am not a fan, and I don't, I enjoy watching it. I want them to do well,
Mm-hmm.
but I've learned long ago not to tie my hopes and dreams to a professional football team, as far as I just do what I do and I report what I report and hope they do well, but not gonna get anxious or anxiety issues over something that like that. But when you look at the roster, what stands out is, obviously you got 4 quarterbacks. That isn't
Mm-hmm.
going to be the state. It's what I said from day one. They were going to trade one as an asset, but going through 2 practices and getting off the field as of 4:00, they still had 4 quarterbacks. So that tells me a couple things. It tells me they still are in the picture to make a move. If they would have felt like they've exhausted all their options in a trade, they probably would have just cut, one of them and moved on and get somebody at a position of need. I mean, when you look there, if you've seen my videos, it's kind of hilarious. 2 running backs working with Deuce Staley, Pierre Strong and Jerome Ford. 2 tight ends working with the tight end coach. I mean, that's like almost one-on-one tutoring.
Right.
But, the tight end position, they may go that way a while. But everybody knows they're not going to have 2 running backs come the first game. So
Right.
with that said, I still expect them. They could even drag this out until next week. I don't know if they would open the first game with 4 quarterbacks in case, the first day a quarterback gets hurt, and then that's what they do. But they obviously are talking, or and it's probably a waiting game. Teams are waiting that are interested in a Huntley or whoever, and waiting the Browns out, knowing they'll probably release them. So, but no, I'm not anxious because they're going to reshuffle this deck. The practice squad today, it's what I've said for a long time. It's a piece of the puzzle. The guys they cut yesterday, in their mind, were guys they thought would get through waivers. The veteran guys like Justin Hardy, James Prochet, guys that they had on the practice squad all last year. Why would they worry about losing them if they were available all the time? So they use the practice squad kind of like your minor leagues. And the guys, why would a guy resign to the practice squad? Because he wants a job. This isn't the beginning practice squads. When I first covered, they got like $300 and it was just rookies. Now these guys, depending on their age and their years of service, they're getting maybe 10 to 15,000 a week.
Yeah.
If you're on there for 5-6 weeks, you probably got the average, more than the average person's income for the year. So, that's a pretty good gig just to practice and know you can't get hurt. You can't get hit. Right. So anyway, they kept Javion Cohen. They kept all the draft picks but Joan Briggs, and they got him back on the practice squad. A lot of that is because the draft picks, it's fresh from the draft season, a couple of months ago, and a lot of teams probably had most of those guys on their board. Javion Cohen, even undrafted, and Amarian Brown, and guys that they gave money to, they really liked, but they had to cut them. So, some of them guys they kept on the roster because they were pretty sure they'd lose them. So they may try to sneak them back to the practice squad once other teams are involved in all their problems,
Right.
When all these cuts are happening, I have to believe it's chaos for every general manager trying to get, all this going. And I don't think they're going, oh, I want to sit there and look at all the cut guys from the Browns and see. And if they do, they might have already signed a guy at a position that the Browns kept, and then they go,
Right.
oh, we already got somebody. So,
Yeah.
they'll probably lose guys throughout the year from the practice squad. But right now, we said this roster was good. It was hard to make the team. And the biggest surprises to me was probably the guys they went out, like Justin Hardy, a Pro Bowl special teams guy from Cleveland, and Tony Brown. Even though they didn't seem to play that great as a cornerback, they were good at special teams. And last year they went out and had Matthew Adams and Mike Ford, who were just on there for special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Now they got them back on practice squad, and they'll probably elevate them on game day. In fact, the word is they also are bringing back Mike Ford. So, it'll be a fluid thing. There'll be changes between now and the first game because they have to get it. They have to address running back. They have to probably delete a quarterback. And then who knows what else will happen.
Yeah. Well, Fred, to rewind that a little bit to the beginning, I have to applaud you on your emotional separation from the Cleveland Browns, the fate of the Cleveland Browns on the field, because if you didn't do that, you would probably be some sort of an emotional wreck, perhaps addicted to pumpkin spice coffee or wearing an orange shirt on a weekly Wednesday show, battle scarred beyond belief and irreparably damaged. It's a good thing you're not that.
Yeah, I mean, coming through the preseason, the preseason games are like the worst entertainment I'd ever can imagine. And if you weren't paying me to watch those games, I would not be watching them. And so I have to do it for all our legions of fans who weren't too interested or weren't interested in staying up till 1 or 2 in the morning to see all the guys that got cut today or yesterday.
Yeah, the preseason, boy, oh boy. And, where it mattered were those practices with the Vikings, right? Which we weren't allowed to tape and fans weren't allowed to see, and all that, all in top secret. But that's what really mattered, as it turns out. The world's fastest fat man, I still love that handle, says it's damn near game week. Let's go Browns. So he's revved up and ready to go. Mick the dog has a question for you, Fred. He says, I want to ask Fred, has he seen a clear improvement in the operation of the offense when Watson has taken snaps over Jameis? So is there a noticeable improvement when it's Deshaun Watson behind center, Fred?
Well, he's clearly in command, as the leader of the team. The last practice we were able to watch was last week. So we don't get to see practices anymore. We're back into the cloak and dagger when we see the first 20 minutes, who's out on the field. And I'm sure there's guys that go out on the field after we leave. But, I think it's an uncertainty going into the season. They chose to play it safe. Like I said, the practices with the Vikings were the closest thing to reality. And the Browns offensive line was getting eaten alive because they had, James Hudson and Jermaine Afidi at left tackle and Antonio didn't practice at least one of those days. And, they weren't scheming. And Watson would have been sacked 6, 7, 8 times. Right. They weren't allowed to hit him, but they touched him, and then he'd throw a pass anyway. So it wasn't much different whether it was, Winston or Watson in that regards, except the Vikings pass rush on their second team wasn't as voracious as the first team pass rush. They have some pretty good players up there at edge rusher and on their defensive line. So, it's really going to be a little bit of uncertainty. I mean, I know that doesn't answer the question, but we haven't really, and it's part of it's been designed. They haven't really put it all together yet. They offense or defense. They're just now practicing with a full complement of players.
Right.
And that's still without Nick Chubb and still without Jedrick Wills. We don't know if Conklin's going to be switched over to left tackle or not. We don't get to see any of that. Now, Conklin didn't practice today. It was a scheduled day rest after he practiced the day before. So, guess as good as anybody's. They'll probably get to the opener with a full complement of healthy players, but then it's going to be playing themselves into a rhythm or whatever, and so I think, Watson's throwing to Cooper and Judy and Moore and Tillman now every day and Njoku. So they're getting their timing down, but it's always different in an actual game setting. So we didn't get any of that in the preseason, just got a couple practices under control.
Yeah, and what I fear, Fred, with the first team offense not being on the field, is not the skill level of the players, it is the organization, right? It is, the smoothness of the play calling, it is false starts, it is jumping offside, using Dallas as your first preseason game. I don't know. I mean, follow up here from Mick the dog. He says, as funny as a Browns fan by now, usually I'm bouncing off the walls with excitement. This year, I really don't have a clue what to expect. I don't think any Browns fan, I don't think even the media like yourself, Fred, have an idea what to expect with this team. Just based on last year, you're expecting, I guess, an inconsistent offense and a solid defense. But from the preseason, there's no clue as to what we're going to get on September 8th versus Dallas.
Well, to your point, I don't know if there's any clue on any team what you're going to get from them. I mean, maybe you can say the Chiefs are going to hit the ground running and be awesome, but I don't know. You've heard stuff with the Bengals, struggling a little bit, and Jamar Chase is not practicing, and and the Steelers named Wilson by default today, basically because Tomlin told him when he signed there he'd be the starter, and neither of those guys really, according to reports, looked that great. And so I just think you have to go with what the Browns chose to try to get all their guys healthy. I think they're going to be in good shape. I mean, if you would have come out of the preseason saying, well, Cooper's lost for the season, Chubb's lost for the season, Watson's, the whole thing. So you're going to at least start intact.
Right.
And they're looking at down the road, trying to get to the second half of the season and have a chance to make a run for the playoffs to play their best football in December and January. They never really got there, for the most part last year, except the Joe Flacco phenom. But so, it's the right way. It's kind of the way it's going. I mean, I expect pretty soon NFL to do away with preseason games and just have, team scrimmaging. They might end up putting them on TV because they do anything they can do to sell, just like they sell the combine practices on NFL Network. Well, they'll probably have a scrimmage down at the stadium, between another team and where they can control it, but that'll be kind of like your preseason. So I don't know if you're really going to get to a polished product until you get to the regular season. I mean, I think of the Hugh Jackson era when he was really trying to, how important it was to set a winning tradition. I think he went 4-0, and that might have been a 0-16 year or 1-15 year. It really doesn't matter till the regular season starts. Any way you cut it, nobody's going to remember the preseason that the Browns were winless. it's all going to be, how they start performing. And I don't think like that opener last year wasn't the greatest game in the world, but they won.
Mhm.
And and then, they started, they had a disaster over in Pittsburgh. I think that was more about Chubb getting hurt and playing in Pittsburgh
Right.
on Monday night. And then they played good at home against the Titans, and Watson got hurt. So we'll just have to wait and see. It's not the end of the world if they come out flat and lose the Cowboys. Cowboys are a good team, but the Browns have a chance to get off to a good start in the first 4 or 5 games. I mean, you have Jacksonville, who you don't know really, what they're going to be like. And then you got the Giants that seem to be a little in flux. And you got, go to the Raiders, and then you got the Commanders. None of those are daunting teams right now. Those first 5 games, you have a chance to come out of it 3-2 or 4-2 at first 6 games or something. And then you start seeing what you got, and you go from there.
All right. I want to jump forward to this question from Dean Bowditch because I have a similar question, Fred. I got to be honest with you. He asked, "Why on God's green earth are we keeping 4 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster when we supposedly have a top 5 quarterback at 230 million?" I put the emphasis more on that fourth guy. We're keeping Snoop Huntley on this team. We cut somebody we may have liked, like Donta Foreman or Isaiah Thomas or somebody like that, that we cut to keep Snoop Huntley on the team because we might get a 4th or 7th round draft pick in return. It doesn't make sense to me unless they're truly being paranoid about injuries. What do you think, Fred?
It's an asset. I said it from day one. I don't know how it all went down, but this is what I think, just my guess. The Browns were looking for a backup quarterback in free agency. They had moved on from Joe Flacco.
Mm.
They made an offer, talked to Jameis Winston, and while they were talking to Jameis Winston, they probably talked to Huntley and threw out an offer to him. As I understand, they both got 1-year deals, but Huntley got like the minimum, like 1.2 million or something like that. Winston got a lot more, maybe 4 million with his chance to get 8 million. I think that Winston then agreed, and then all I can surmise is that Huntley didn't get any other offers other than maybe going back to the Ravens. And I don't even know if he got one there, and said, you know what? I'll take that because 1.2 million is better than nothing. And it's a
Yeah.
chance to be on a team. The Browns look at these as assets. I said it from day one. They look at 4 assets at quarterback. Yeah, if you didn't learn from last year that you put yourself in a tremendous bad position last year by trading Josh Dobbs, even though he wasn't the greatest quarterback, as it turned out, he was much better at that point than DTR was. A rookie that you threw in against the Ravens in a really big game with about an hour or 2 notice. So that was a disaster. And then, you had the PJ Walker deal, Jeff Driscoll, Flacco, all that. So I don't begrudge them at all for going and overloading the position. They had
Mm.
4 going to training camp. I think they figured if we lose any of them to injury in the preseason or training camp, we got our 3. Okay. None of them got injured. None of them, it looks like they're all ready to go. So they look at that. That's an asset. Look around the league at the NFL backup quarterbacks. I bet you can't name 5 or 6 of them. Most of the people watching here tonight, backup quarterbacks are pretty much pathetic.
Yeah.
They have to look and say, Tyler Huntley's probably better than a lot of these teams' backup quarterbacks, and they might be interested in throwing a 7 or a 6 or a couple draft picks for him, rather than just let him get exposed to waivers, and then you got to wait your turn. If you're interested, and this is what Andrew Berry has done. does anybody like Amari Cooper? Okay. What did you get him with? You got him with a picked up 5th and a picked up 6th round pick. And he's your number 1 wide receiver. I think Jerry Jeudy was also a couple low draft picks. So they look at these as assets to trade for a veteran that maybe has a high salary and a team's trying to unload them, and they'll take anything to get them. They did that, like I said, Jerry Jeudy, and they could do it again. So I don't think it's a mistake. I mean, any of these guys that you mentioned, I think every one of them's on the practice squad that they might have not wanted to cut. They pretty much calculated that those guys would make it through. Yeah, they're on the practice squad and somebody can sign them off it, but they could have claimed them too. So Deontay Foreman, just listening to Stefanski when asked about him, I think they've talked to him, and I think they're just saying he did have a rib injury the other night in the preseason game. People forgot. So I think they'll bring him back. And so I don't think they cut somebody like that knowing they couldn't get him back. Siaki Ika's like the only one I heard that signed with a practice, and I'm not sure they even were going to try to bring him back. I don't know. So, and that again, he hasn't done anything since he's been here, but he was a 3rd round pick, and other teams that were in the draft go, oh, he was good. And so they grab him. Andrew Berry does the same type thing. So anyway, I rest assured that they'll make a move in the next few days. And if they can't trade him, they'll release. I assume it'll be Huntley. And then he'll probably go back to the Ravens or sign with one of these other teams, maybe as their 2nd or 3rd guy.
Yeah, Fumble 13 points out that Miami has been linked to him. And in terms of a trade possibility, if they're willing to give up a pick, see ya, Huntley. See ya. He's as good as gone. If they give up a pick for him, as far as I'm concerned. Another from Fumble, he said, did they sign Latu, the tight end from San Francisco, to the practice squad? Nothing official yet. I've not heard anything official on Cameron Latu from San Francisco being signed, but it is a rumor. Brad Steinberg has reported it. I think I've seen it from one other source as well, but nothing official from the team as of this moment, right, Fred?
Yeah, as of I left Berea about an hour and a half ago, and there was nothing new on any moves. They didn't even confirm Mike Ford had been signed as reported. Stefanski was asked about him, and he didn't say, yeah, he just said it's always nice to have familiar faces. So I think he's on the team. I just don't know if he's a practice squad. I think he is. So they announced 13, and those guys were pretty much at practice today because they were all on the team.
Yeah.
Now, one of the 13 is Roy Mabedeka, however you say it. He's an international player. He didn't count against the 90-man roster because he's on that international pathway program. I don't know if he counts against the practice squad or not. I would assume he doesn't.
He doesn't.
So if he doesn't, they really only signed 12. So they would have 4 openings. And if Ford's one and this tight end, that would make sense because they did, as far as I know, they didn't bring back Zaire Mitchell-Payton, and Trayton Welch supposedly went to the Saints. And so if they got this tight end, he would be the only tight end. He'd actually still be 3rd. I'm surprised, unless the Browns didn't want Welch back, why he wouldn't have stayed here, because he would have been 3rd tight end, and they like to use 3 tight ends. But yeah, so I don't know, but they'll fill it out. It'll probably be, I think they'll make a move somewhere with Foreman, and he could take the place of the Huntley roster spot, or they could make some other moves. But there's always some jockeying for position on the bottom end of the roster right now, but I don't know of anything but the official. What Brad reported and what Schefter reported this morning about Mike Ford. I think you can kind of count on Mike Ford being back,
Right.
which is a good move. You lost him in free agency. You kind of wanted him back, but he got cut. So he comes back. He knows the special teams routine. He's a core special teams player. So now you have three of them if you count Hardy and Tony Brown and now Ford.
Yeah, and a little bit of buzz. I think you can find it in the insider forums that the San Francisco guy may not be the only tight end who comes in, but check out our insider forums for more on that. Sancho Bermuda asks us, would you guys support an 18-game season with 2 bye weeks? And the Super Bowl is always on a 3-day weekend with President's Weekend. That's an interesting proposal right there, Fred. You think that's inevitable? You know, it doesn't matter whether we support it or not, but that's the way the NFL is going to go. 18-game season eventually.
Yes. On every game, I think, I don't know the numbers on this, but would far outweigh the money lost in the preseason games because you get another game. What'd they do with the 17th? They put it out for bid, and they got Peacock doing things. They got Netflix. I don't know if it's Netflix,
Amazon,
Prime.
or
They're gonna have. That's a whole new area to sell games to, or to an existing partner. But yeah, they're just gonna keep ramping that up. As a consumer, the preseason is a joke. I mean, I can honestly, I cover the NFL. I covered the 3 Browns games. I did not watch one other preseason game on any network on anything. I don't know how many people. I know there's a lot of people are really into that stuff, but it's just not my thing to watch 40, 50 guys that aren't going to play in the NFL this year. I'm just not interested in it. And, I could say the same thing about the UFL or the XFL or whatever the leagues are. I didn't watch any of that stuff just because you might watch the whole season and there might be one guy that, oh, I remember watching that guy, because even the MVPs in their league haven't come in and right away. I know the Browns signed the Defensive Player of the Year a couple of years ago from a spring league, and I think he was on injury reserve all year. Never played. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. Yes, they're going to do and that's when Roger Goodell has already been trolling about it by saying, I think we'll kind of get rid of the preseason games when we go to an 18-game season. So that's the bargaining chip to the players. No preseason games. So even though you're not playing too much in those games, 18 games. So, throwing that extra bye week. Early on, there was 2 bye weeks. I don't know how long ago it was, but remember there was 2 bye weeks. So that's not a big thing to bring back. Those bye weeks really seem to be the get back healthy week. And if you had one maybe at twice in the year, I think that'd be really good. You have one after 6 games and 12 games or something like that. I think that would help a lot of teams. And they'll probably expand the roster a little bit, add a couple more guys. So you're giving the Players Association more rest, more money, more TV revenue, and more guys on the payroll if you add them, there.
Yeah, the NFL is an ever-expanding balloon of money. They've just invited private equity to own 10% of franchises. Just another money hose, and an 18-game season is just inevitable. I mean, they will continue to expand whatever makes them the most money. But I do love the notion of a Super Bowl on a 3-day weekend. I really love that concept. Because staying up late on Super Bowl Sunday and then having to go to work the next day is that. I don't think anybody likes that.
You still got to go to work. you got to write your news wire at 5 in the morning or some
Yeah, but
ungodly hour.
I'm weird. I'm weird. I'm thinking about normal people who have real jobs. You know, uh, writing the newswire. It's like, it's not a real job. World's fastest fat man writes, I'm still anxious, but I shall now set aside my offensive tackle fears and accept Jack Conklin as our franchise OLT for the next 3 years. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, good question. What could possibly go wrong? What do you think about all this, Fred? I mean, all these rumors that Conklin is taking reps and, doing a little bit at left tackle. Do you think that's to light a fire under Wills, or do you think he's a legit swing tackle, or what are your thoughts about all that hubbub?
Yeah, well, it's Conklin said he played 3 years left tackle in college, but immediately he was switched to right tackle. It made a little more sense when he went to the Titans. The left tackle they had was a Pro Bowler every year, so that's why he played right tackle. So he thinks he can switch over there, okay, if need be. I still am not sure Wills is going to not be ready for the opener. I mean, I don't know what kind of game they're playing, other than it's obvious they didn't want him to have to sit out 4 games, but I don't know how you can pass your physical to practice, but then not practice.
Right.
Okay. And Stefanski said, well, he's going through the walkthroughs. He's progressing. Well, we've heard that forever. I mean, I think it's just Wills' personality. You can see it. Anybody that's watched him play, he just seems like he's just not in a hurry to do anything, And now I don't know his injury, but at the time, if you remember last year, they talked about a sprained knee, which is usually like the MCL, and you can either have surgery or you can let it heal. And they said it was like a 4 to 6 week injury. And if you remember, he sat out like 3-4 weeks, and everybody thought he was going to be put on the active roster. And then they announced that he was going to injury reserve and have surgery. Okay. So obviously it didn't heal. But with the surgery, to be honest, I thought he would be the first one out of the gate compared to even DeJuan Jones.
Right.
Because if he had the same type surgery, he was, I think, a month before Jones was, or somewhere around there. And Jones was pretty much ready for the off-season program, in March and April. So I don't know. I don't want to say the guy, didn't get hurt, or maybe just didn't recover quick enough. But I certainly thought he was going to be ready for training camp. Then they put him on PUP, and I thought, okay, he'll come off after a week. And then it went the whole training camp. And then they even kind of made this move, and Conklin starts practicing before he did. Now, Conklin got hurt in the season opener like September 10th last year, and he tore his ACL, his MCL, his PCL, and his meniscus. That injury was much worse than everybody reported. He mentioned that yesterday. I didn't know that he tore everything like that. But so that's a tough one to come back from, and yet he's out there before Wills. So I don't know. Wills, you would think he'd be motivated because they picked up his 5th-year option. This is the year he's playing for the big contract. And I don't know. We don't get to talk to him. You just see him kind of walking around. He's usually got a towel over his head. And so I don't want to judge him. I just thought he would be, if you're ever motivated, I think you'd be motivated now to get out there as soon as you could. And I don't know who's holding it back. Is it him? Is it the trainers or what? But I still think that he could play if he returns to practice, like, say, Monday next week. Because I remember when J.C. Treader sat out all training camp with, I think he had a surgery and didn't practice the entire summer. I think that was when Nick Harris might have been a rookie. Nick Harris took all the snaps and everything. But Treader showed up the first week, practiced on the Monday, and he started on Sunday, and he was the center. So, so much for needing to be around for training camp. So we'll see with Jed Wills. But if he's not ready to go, I would much rather have Jack Conklin at left tackle than James Hudson or Jermaine Ifedi. I mean, neither of them ever played left tackle. Ifedi had 4 snaps in his career at left tackle. He started the last 2 preseason games. They cut him, brought him back to the practice squad. So that tells you how high they thought of him to even take a chance on losing him. And then you have Hudson's on the team. It's his final year. He started, I think, 14 games, all at right tackle. But they have him as the left tackle all training camp in place of Will. So I still think Conklin is a better option than Hudson if Wills isn't ready. But I have no idea, what they'll do.
Yeah.
It would just make no sense to me if you open the season with Hudson at left tackle and DeJuan Jones at right tackle with Conklin as the backup, getting $12 million a year.
Right. Yeah, it does not seem economical. But yeah, I would expect Wills to be practicing this next week and start, but I've been confounded at every turn with him. James Porch asked, could Wills be holding in for another contract? But I mean, we've gotten that question before, and it just makes no sense at all. This is his contract year. This is his opportunity, and he does not want to lose his job to Jack Conklin. It just because they won't put up with that. They'll just start Jack Conklin. It makes no sense to me at all that would be his strategy.
If he just wants to collect his 13 to 15 million this year on the 5th year and then go to free agency unproven, with anything. But, I don't know. He just doesn't seem motivated, at least to this point. We'll get to talk to him whenever he gets activated or when he returns to practice, but I don't expect him to say a whole lot. But
Right.
as far as the whole thing, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the practices and all that. And he was the 10th pick in the draft, so you expected him to kind of be maybe not Joe Thomas, but at least pushing a Pro Bowl type player. He's a starting caliber NFL left tackle. He might not be top tier, but I do think he's better than anything out there. He's a middle of the road starter in the NFL left tackle. Mm-hmm. And I think that can be okay for this team. Right. You want to upgrade. I don't know if Conklin at this stage of his career at 29, 30 years old, how good he'd be, at left tackle when he's played all the years at right tackle in the NFL. So we'll see. You went in the season with your biggest, you had your top 3 tackles last year coming off knee surgery. You thought they would all be back. And it's really been Jones is the only one that's really been solidly back. Right. You don't know if Conklin's going to be ready for the opener. You don't know if Wills will be ready. So that's where you're at. You just hope that's one of the reasons why Watson didn't play the other night was they just didn't have a lot of confidence, behind Ifedi.
Right. Well, we've got a few questions left to go here, and we still have to talk about our friends from Core Home Fitness. So we're going to get a move on here because we need to end by 8 o'clock so we can hand off to Pete and Brad so they can do the React, which is an excellent show. Make sure you stick around for that. But let's talk a little bit about our friends from Core Home Fitness who sponsor this program. You hear me talk about them every week. They are awesome. They have a fantastic product, particularly their adjustable dumbbells, which are top rated. As you guys know, if you sit through this program every week, New York Times, Consumer Reports, you name it, they say they are the best, and they are the best. We've gotten testimonials from people in the chat room even over the course of the months that we've been sponsored by Core Home Fitness, telling us that yeah, these are the real deal, and definitely check them out. You can check out their videos and their other products like the Glute Drive Plus and so forth to crush your goals in 2024. They've got a US based support team, fast shipping, hassle free returns. These guys, well, they know what they're doing. So, again, check out corehomefitness.com for the ultimate in home fitness equipment. And make sure you support them like they support your friends at the OBR and help us keep going with this free video programming. So, thanks, Core Home Fitness. All right, let's get back to the questions from the chat room. Superfly Rob wants to know, is there any buzz on Coach Andy Dickerson being a big drop from Bill Callahan? Boy, that's a tough question because just about anybody's going to be a big drop from Bill Callahan, don't you think, Fred?
Yeah, I mean, you've heard them all say good things, the players, but the results haven't been good. But is it because you've been without your tackles? Joe Batonio didn't practice a lot. You really only had two guys, in Wyatt Teller and Ethan Posick practicing most of the summer. DeJuan Jones was kind of rested somewhat. So you haven't had a cohesive unit. So yeah, it's gonna be a telltale sign. Everybody's been positive, but all I can say is in that scrimmage with the Vikings, it didn't look good for the reasons I mentioned. But you could have Bill Callahan, and if he put me at left tackle and I was his only choice, and I gave up a sack on every play, it wouldn't necessarily be because Bill Callahan's a lousy coach or Andy Dickerson's a lousy coach. It's because you don't have players that can do the job. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, again, it'll be determined once they get going. I think the running game really wasn't that good last year, obviously, after Nick Chubb got hurt. So when Nick Chubb's playing and you're a top 5 running team, is it because the offensive line's so awesome and Bill Callahan did a great job? Or is it because you got Nick Chubb?
Right.
And when you go the other way, is it because you don't have Nick Chubb? Or is it because Bill Callahan did a lousy job? It's a little bit of both, but I do think, Dickerson, needs to put them in the right places but they really need to have a cohesive unit, and hopefully they'll have that here within the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
One thing I'll bring up that nobody's mentioned, big news to me today, was Denzel Ward returned to practice.
Yes.
A lot of people were concerned. He's had 5 concussions, but he was back on the field practicing today. And I think that's big news because some people were saying, like, what if you get to the Cowboys and you don't have Denzel Ward against CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott and Greg Newsom's coming off a hamstring injury, so they're going to test him. And so I think that's big news, that Denzel was out there. He isn't fully cleared from the protocol. As I understand, the last step is to practice, and then they see how you do. So as long as he didn't have any problems after practice, he should be good to go. So I think that was big news today.
Did they say anything at all about precautions they're going to take with him? Anything about working him in slowly or guardian caps or anything along those lines with him?
Well, first of all, he was wearing a guardian cap when he got the concussion.
Yeah.
He fell to the ground and hit his head, when he was covering Elijah Moore. And Stefanski just defers to, I trust the medical staff. They know what they're doing and whatever they think's best, which is the right answer. Because coaches probably would put people out there maybe before their time. I know I was kind of tempted to do that when I was coaching, because you're like, yeah, but you're like 10 times better than the guy I have to put in for you.
Right.
And Ward has been the one that we've asked him before this happened at Greenbrier, and he said he did a lot of research on concussions. He feels very comfortable where he's at, and so, I know if I was in that position, I still being young and thinking you're invincible. You're not thinking 30 years down the road. You're thinking about right now,
Right.
it's unfortunate, but I don't think Bernie Kosar, if you'd have asked him 30 years ago when he was playing, is he worried about stuff that he's got going on now? No, that's just the way we're built, or athletes are built.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, you see later in life, have repercussions for it.
Yep. Yep. Let's get a question from Surge MDC in here. He said, "Does Fred have a feeling about any player, a vet or a young guy, having a big season based on what he saw this summer? I personally think said Tillman overtakes more for wide receiver 3. Yeah, they're a little bit different players, but said Tillman certainly looked good in that last preseason game, didn't he, Fred?"
Well, I've been touting him all off season, even since I talked to Andrew Berry about him. I said, do you really feel like he can be in the rotation, number 4 and maybe even number 3? And he said, absolutely. And so I agree. I mean, Moore's in the last year of his contract. If he doesn't step up, he's going to start as the number 3, but they might play a little different position because of their size. Moore's more of a smaller, quicker guy.
Mm-hmm.
Tillman's a rangy, taller guy, but I think Tillman, has a chance to definitely be in the top 4, and I think he could move up. And if he really excels this year, they could move on from Moore, let him leave as a free agent, and then replace him with a Jamari Thrash or something like that. So, yes, I do. JOK is not under the radar, but I think he's going to even pick up where he left off last year. I think that he's got the contract out of the way. I think he really was coming into his own the last half of the season, had 20 tackles for loss. I think he will pick up and be that type of sideline to sideline player. A little more under the radar, I think Alex Wright came on at the end of last year, and we know that with a lot of the defensive lines, with the rotation, guys get banged up, get nicked up. I think he has a chance to, really establish himself as one of the top, 2 or 3 pass rushers on this team. So, I think that from what I've seen, a guy, like Mohamed Diabate, or Khalif Halassi, they like them. They kept them on the roster. I think they have a chance to move into a more prominent role, if they get the trust, of Jim Schwartz. So there's several young guys. It's just a matter of, I would say the same thing about Mike Hall, but now he's kind of in limbo on the exempt list. You don't know, is he going to miss 6 weeks? Going to miss half a year, the whole year? I don't know. Mm-hmm. And so we know young rookies, usually it takes them a while to get going. And so I don't know what you can say about him. I think Jamari Thrash has a chance to also, the second half of the season, maybe work into the rotation, depending on what happens. Miles Harden, I think, could also help in the cornerback room. He displayed some, and that's a bonus to get out of a 7th round pick. So there's a lot of up and coming guys if they get their chance, if they make the most of it.
Yeah, a lot of youngsters with potential on this team, that's for sure. Another question from Dean Bowditch. He says, if Watson struggles this year and wins 7 games or less, will the front office admit that the Watson trade was a bust, or will they be forced to put him out there again next year? So let's hope this doesn't happen, of course. But if Watson comes out and he doesn't display anything more than he's displayed these last couple of years, what do you think this front office does, Fred? I know we'll handle that. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But just thinking ahead a little bit, do you think that this team starts to look seriously at DTR, or do you think that they might start looking around for, what's next?
Well, I think they've proven to be bold and aggressive. If Watson struggles and Winston were to play and light it up like Flacco did last year, I can see them signing Winston to an extension. I don't know if they're ready to take that leap that DTR is the franchise quarterback. A lot depends on, this year. Boy, 7 wins. If it's all because of the quarterback, yeah. But they could win 7 games just because they have a tough schedule in the AFC North. And it might be, you tell me 5 or 6 key guys, like maybe a guy like Myles Garrett, or start naming 5 or 6 key guys, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku.
Mm-hmm.
They get hurt and can't play. You can't blame it on the quarterback if everybody's hurt. So
right.
I said it in my preview. I'm going to say it again. I'm not going to stick. I think it's all about him staying on the field. If he stays on the field, I think he'll put up good numbers. I venture to say if he plays the whole season, he'll have better numbers than Baker Mayfield's best year here when the Browns went to the playoffs and they were, 11-5. He threw 26 touchdowns and I think 8 or 9 interceptions. I think Watson would have those numbers, if not better. I have him throwing for 30 touchdowns this year. That's still only about not even 2 a game.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just got to stay on the field. I've said this and I'll continue to say it until it proves me wrong, is that if he stays on the field and he just plays like an average NFL quarterback, they can make the playoffs with this team, with this roster, this defense. But for them to go further than the first game of the playoffs, he's going to have to, by the end of the year, in December or the playoffs, play like a top 10, top 12 quarterback like they traded for. So let's give it the benefit of the doubt. But if he plays all year and they win 7 games and there's no real reason other than because the quarterback, yeah, they'll look hard and serious because they know what they've invested in this team. And if the only reason they're not winning is because their quarterback sucks, they're going to go do something about it.
Right.
They're not going to just say, oh, well, they've shown they'd be willing to be aggressive and eat a salary or whatever. But you got to have a better option. They, whether you believe this or not, felt that their ceiling was at the top with Baker Mayfield. They felt the only way they could get to the Super Bowl was to get an elite Pro Bowl type quarterback. And when they traded for Watson, he was an elite Pro Bowl type quarterback. The last time he played, he led the NFL in passing yardage, over 4,800 yards or something like that. And he hasn't done anything near that. But a lot of it's because he hasn't been on the field long enough.
Right.
6 games. He got going, then he got hurt. Then he got going, he got hurt. And then he got shut down for the season. The last he played, I would take what he did in that win over the Ravens every game. That second half, you couldn't do much better than that. And he had a broken shoulder. He had high ankle sprain. He still was 14-14. So if he just does that, dink and dunk, and get the ball to Njoku and Cooper and Jeudy and Chubb and whoever, I think he'll be fine. He's got to stay on the field.
Okay. World's Fastest Fat Man asked if there's any news on Isaiah Thomas. Seemed like the most game day ready guy we cut. I did not see him added to the practice squad. Do we know what's up? I haven't heard anything, Fred. It's like he fell off the face of the earth. Have you heard anything about Isaiah Thomas in the last 24 hours?
I guess I thought he was on the practice squad. I guess he's not.
He is not.
Yeah. Well, players have choices in that, and I'm sure that he's feeling hurt. He has been here. He was drafted by the team. And then, he got hurt last year in the preseason. Basically could never get back on the field because he got once they got going. So he might be looking at his options and saying, geez, do I want to be behind Zadarius Smith, Myles Garrett, Ogo Okoronkwo, Alex Wright? They kept Isaiah McGuire over me. So that means I'm 6th at best. And if you get a contract with another team, you make a lot more money than the practice squad, even though the practice squad's pretty good. So I'm sure he's keeping his options open. And if another team, sometimes guys just go somewhere else just because they're like, oh, I'm not going back there. I'm done with them. I can't believe they cut me. That could be the case. I would think they would have wanted him back, but I didn't see that he signed anywhere. But he might be looking at his options and the chance that they have 4 open spots or maybe 2 open spots. I wouldn't rule it out.
Right.
But
right.
I think more player ready. I mean, is Justin Hardy's a Pro Bowl? Now I know it's special teams, but he's ready to go. I mean, Justin Hardy's like a 8-year veteran. So, I mean, I'm sure he'll get elevated to be on special teams the first day, maybe even Tony Brown. Ifedi can step in. James Prochet was their punt returner last year. All those guys are. Jalen Darden probably can do it as well. They don't have Naeem Hines for the first 4 games, so it'll probably be, elevation on game day, like a Prochet or Darden or something. They'll rotate that around. So, yeah, I don't know about Isaiah Thomas. I thought he looked pretty good, but I mean, they chose Isaiah McGuire over him.
Right. So, yeah, he may be evaluating his options at this point, Fred. Well, we should probably wrap up here so the guys from the React can start on time. We do have one call for a pickleball statue of Fred outside of Cleveland Stadium. I'm not sure I would go that far. With all this development of Berea, Fred, they've got to be building a pickleball court, and they should name it after you, realistically. I think I can get behind that. Can you get behind that?
Or yeah, I don't know if I want a pickleball. I don't know if I want a pickleball thing named after me. I'd like a bat in my hand, my baseball. Always wanted a statue of myself. I've been trying to get my university that I am in their Hall of Fame. How about retire my number or build a statue? But I don't think they're going to do that. But yeah, I mean, with the stadium, it might be demolished if they put it outside the stadium. So I think Berea is a better, safer bet.
All right. Very good. And Found516 wants to know what beer I'm drinking. I'm actually drinking seltzer because I have to keep up with the legend here. And if I'm alcoholically impaired, I cannot keep up with this man over the course of an hour. But I do want to thank you and everyone for hanging out with us and for all the great questions tonight to make up for my lack of preparation, as always. Really appreciate it. We will be back again next Wednesday to preview the Dallas Cowboys game and maybe offer you some predictions for the season.
Are we doing Wednesday or Monday?
Oh, that's a good point. We may be moving to Monday next week. We are going to announce a new video schedule, and here I am, airhead. I forget all about it. But yeah, we may be moving to Monday at 8 o'clock next week after a brand new show that we're going to start telling you about tomorrow. So all exciting stuff. Thanks for the reminder, Fred. So everybody be prepared for that news hitting the airwaves at the OBR. And you may have a new day for OBR Weekly. So we will see you next week. Thanks for hanging with us, and stay tuned for the React. Catch you later.